2, 1. Welcome, Thane, to the podcast. I'm so glad you're in my home.
Yeah, first time over here.
Yeah, how you doing?
Pretty good. Slightly tired, but tends to happen on nice hot summer days.
Yeah, I'm in a weird place because you woke me up from like a very deep slumber, and now we're doing this.
Yes. Hopefully the tea, the barking, and some of the pizza will wake you up as well.
Yeah, no, I feel great. So, the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about was all I was saying about personal information and like the things that we're willing to talk about on camera, because this is something that I'm running into, it seems, is that there's some things that you don't want to have broadcasted to the whole world. And maybe there's good reasons for that, and maybe I'm going to argue against them a little bit.
Okay.
But we can start out by saying that there's like kind of two categories of things that people may not want to talk about. There's like personal information. Like, I really don't feel like going into my childhood trauma.
All right.
And have random people listen to it.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's reasonable. I get that. But, there's also a lot of benefit to talking about your personal experience for a lot of people to hear,
Yeah. And especially if you've come out the other side of it, and it's like you can share that as a story of, hey, here's how I can help maybe guide someone else through something that they're going through, then I'd say there's a lot of value in that.
Exactly. And I especially feel for like young people who are trying to navigate the world. I feel like I'm a young person trying to navigate the world.
I would say we're both relatively young people, yes.
But, like even younger, like...
like teenagers.
Yeah,
Elementary schoolers.
Anyways, getting a little off track. That's the one topic, is like personal information that you don't want to dive into. The other thing is just like topics that people get emotional about quickly, whether it's like politics. In our circle, it's not really religion because a lot of our friends are all from the church.
Yeah.
So, but typically religion, like race, abortion, politics, all the good stuff. That's like just a realm of offensive, controversial things that people probably don't want to talk about in a public forum.
Yeah, and I can understand why in a lot of those cases. Where, like, for me, I don't have the energy to fight with people. So it's kind of a matter of caution of like, all right, how much argument am I willing to start by saying something when I could not say it? Because there's some of it where if I don't feel like it's going to have an impact on anything, then I'm not going to bother.
Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah, I don't want to start an argument that's not going to go anywhere productive. Like, if I have a point and I want to debate someone about it, and it's like, hey, this is what I've found. Like, let's talk about this. I want to understand where you're at with it, and I want to see how what I have found lines up with what you've found. And there's a lot of times where I feel like there's a lot of middle ground that people don't explore because they're very strongly one side or the other. Yeah. And it's like, if you give ground on that, then you're saying you were wrong, and not necessarily in the, well, I can't be wrong about anything, but like, there's a lot of today's climate where it's like, oh, well, if you're wrong about this one thing, what else are you wrong about? Everything? That's right, because we're correct, and you're not, and you're a terrible person for it.
I hate you.
Yeah. So people are, I can see where they'd be like, no, we have to stand firm where we are, because that's where we have the support of other people. Yeah. And you feel safer there.
Sure.
So I don't know. I try and listen to both sides of arguments, but oftentimes I'll keep my own results to myself unless I feel like I've got a chance, compelling conversation one way or the other. Yeah. So whether it's someone where I see, hey, I really am interested in what you have to say about this because you seem like you're onto something. It's like, let's talk. Let's see where this lines up. But also, if I may be in that position, it's like, I don't think there's some things that you've considered here, so let's talk about that and see where that goes. So,
well, to be fair, a lot of the, public discourse is just Facebook, right?
Yes. It's the most public forum you really have currently, because you're not out and about in a crowd of people talking about things. But even then, like, you have such a wide reach depending on your privacy settings and how many people you've friended.
Yeah.
But like, if you, let's say it's like friends of friends can check out your page. And in which case, if you have 200 friends and they all have 200 friends, then that's suddenly 40,000 that you're looking at reaching potentially.
Some quick math. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I'm saying that because I would assert that a lot of the problem is the medium and it's not the discussion.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't help if you don't see the person. Like, I was having a conversation with one of the guys at work the other day about kind of how I would rank quality of conversation. And so at the bottom... You're
at like a 2, just so you know.
Not necessarily on like an individual level, but I mean, depending on how they go about it, it could be. It's like bottom rank for me is seeing a tweet where it's like, it's so short, it's probably really impersonal because you're seeing just a little blurb of this person's entire thought process.
Yeah.
And there's so much that can be misread and miscommunicated, and it's just not a very effective way of getting a good idea across.
It's just like a shrapnel of a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you want the entire grenade.
You want the whole grenade. Can you pull us a little closer? Like, just, there you go.
Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's the lowest level.
Yeah.
Just a little brain fragment.
I would say next probably comes the text or an email. Where it's like, it's still written. It's still not a visual view of the person. Like, I can't read your emotion from your facial expressions, your body posture, everything like that. So I would put email, text, like step 2. Because you can add emojis, but it's not nearly the same as like actually being around someone.
Sure.
So then from there you go phone calls, right? Phone calls, pretty good. You can hear the tone of the voice. Really enjoy that aspect of it. Because I tend to be a very sarcastic person, and that does not translate well just over text.
Right, unless you have a rapport.
Yeah, or you're on Discord or something, and you can italicize what you're saying and
all
just
of the
make it
nerds
stand
out here
out.
Don't know what Discord is. It's a group chat, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically you just create servers where you can add people and talk about different stuff.
You said the word server.
That's server. We just lost it. All right, we're not at a restaurant. These are computers.
Yeah.
But
yeah, chat room. That's another level.
Yeah. So up from there, I would go the Zoom call, the Skype call, FaceTime. Call it what you want. But so it's close. You're getting there. You've got the visual of the person. You can hear their tone of voice, but it's still not the same as actually being in the room with someone. So I would say this is top tier communication, Mr. Nathan.
Top tier. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and I think I would even expand your analysis a little bit in a different direction. There's the axis of what is being communicated. Like I noticed on Facebook memes or posts or whatever, there's like this weird declarative command like attitude of like, do you know what I'm saying?
Like if I have to make a point with what I'm saying?
Yes. Like, this is my TED Talk. If you think that this and this and this, then you are this. Like, who talks like that? No, even if I was in a heated disagreement with someone, I wouldn't be phrasing things in that way. I would be maybe expressing my thoughts. I would be saying, here's what I think, which is very different than like, if you think this, then you're this, which is how Facebook and how memes are phrased, because I guess they're more aggressive and pointed, and because it's one-sided. You know, it's like we're firing past each other.
It's less, I'm presenting my own thoughts and putting them out there from like the origin of me, and more I'm going to say what you are. I'm going to focus on you not because this is what I think, but because you are just evil on the inside. And
well,
there's nothing that
there's
can be done
like
about that if you feel like this.
Yeah, those are easy memes to create a straw man and attack it for sure. But anyways, there's different levels for absolutely. And I think like I want to get people to be comfortable talking about topics that we've seen people on Facebook talk about them and it goes horribly. And I just want to say like we can have that same exact conversation in person, and with a little bit of skill, it'll go much better than it goes on Facebook just because of the format, the medium. It's so restricted. I mean, and I think that's what you said about what's the point. I don't want to just like get in a fight for no reason. That's probably what a lot of people feel like. What's the point of conflict? And I also feel that way, especially about Facebook, because you accomplish nothing by getting into a Facebook argument. It's horrible, but I don't know. I think that, like, in person, people don't actually get so angry.
Yeah. Well, because it's so much easier to get angry when you don't have to look at someone in the face and see, oh, maybe this kind of hurts for them to experience. And I feel bad for saying things like that. Or, I don't know, it's just, you can't read the actual person. You're looking at text and what you think they're trying to say through their idea.
Yeah.
And, I mean, when you have people that are like, oh, I see where you're going with this. Let me just kind of interject and say, like, all right, this is a little amendment to what I said to convey my idea a little more clearly. Which, if you try and do that in a Facebook comment thread, like, they can just drop that initial angry response and they don't have to interact with it anymore. It's like, it's there. I don't care what else you have to say. I've already written you off.
Yeah.
And that's the other part where it's so easy to just delete someone online. It's like, all right, you're blocked and I don't have to listen to you anymore. Where when you're in person, if something goes on where it's like, all right, I guess we're done, it's so much more uncomfortable. And it feels like there's a lot more investment in like trying to do something like that, especially between friends. Where, I've had friends where, I mean, we may not talk to each other a whole lot on Facebook, and then suddenly they've disappeared. And it's like, all right, well, I guess that was the goodbye. And you don't have to deal with the person after that. Where if it's in person, I was like, sorry, Nathan, but this isn't working out. I'm going to have to fire you as a friend.
Yeah.
And,
you know how, like, we've been hanging out consistently every month, you know?
Yeah.
For, like, the last that thing that you said.
Several years.
And so now, we're done.
Yeah. It's so much harder to look at someone in the face and be like, I'm sorry, but you no longer have value to me as a person, so have a good life.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think about that too much, but that's definitely true. I mean, people do that a lot with their families, but I kind of get that sometimes. I thought about, like, would it actually go well to have like two really staunchly opposing people like sit here and I could try to moderate it. And I don't know if that's actually a good idea. I mean, part of what I'm sick of is the people that are on the extremes,
and they're just firmly entrenched one side or the other.
Well, it's like those are the loudest people, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the only dialogue you see. And so I want to engage with all of the normal people, but all the normal people are the ones that are reasonable and don't want to, like,
they're not looking to start something that's going to be controversial.
Exactly. Yeah. But, like, that's the space that I want to mine, for good conversation.
And I don't know, I think you'd find a lot of success with it. I don't know. I mean, sometimes with a podcast format where it's like, oh, this is going to be broadcast to other people. And it's less of a, okay, this is between me and Nathan, and we can talk, and that's totally fine. Into this is reaching a much broader audience, and may wind up sparking those very things that I just don't care to get into. And some of it, it's like the easy response is, I'm not going to read the comments on the podcast. That's one way you could go about it. And it's like, all right, I'll put that out there, and if people want to deal with it on the internet, let it stay on the internet.
Right. Well, yeah, sticks and stones, right?
Yeah.
Sticks and stones. I mean, there's some people who are in positions where their job might be affected if they say something, you know, and neither of us are really in that position.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a level of professional discretion with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But I don't think that's the real thing that we're hitting. I think it's what you're talking about, where it's just kind of an emotional decision that you make to not go somewhere, you know, because you don't want to spark the negative responses and have to deal with the negative responses.
Yeah. And I don't know, it seems like that's changed too. Like, I don't know, feels like for the last 5 years or so, as far as disagreeing with people has become more and more taxing on the interpersonal relationship. Where I remember growing up, I had a ton of friends where it was like, we all have very different opinions on things, but end of the day, we're all friends and we're all there for each other. And sure, we'll still argue about these things, but it's not like a, cool, I'm gonna go find other friends, and like you can deal with being who you are. I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
It's like there's some level where it's like, okay, it's good to surround yourself with people that are going to be good for you, but it doesn't mean that everyone who disagrees with you is bad for you.
Yeah, the echo chamber effect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking today, you know, I was looking on Spotify and I saw a podcast that was just like, not for me, I guess you could say. Like
you looked at it and was like,
it's just not something I would normally listen to at all.
Okay. What was it about?
It was called Nancy. So it was, and the title was something about, what was it? Well, there's like the Black Lives Matter movement, but then there's a smaller faction that's like, we should be talking about Black trans lives. And they're upset kind of with the Black Lives Matter movement because, like Black trans people are being, you know, mistreated, and it's not getting the appropriate amount of attention. And that's not something I would normally want to listen to.
Okay.
Honestly, I would normally want to listen to, you know, The Portal with Eric Weinstein, or, you know, some Joe Rogan Experience that fits my demographic, that fits like my brain, the stuff I'm interested in. But I can see how like your personality and your attitude and who you are just funnels you into your own echo chamber.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to naturally have things you gravitate towards.
Right. But in the internet age, like there's no friction in place for us to like avoid being funneled directly into our own echo chambers. Like I could very easily click away from that and go find something else that I wanted to listen to.
Then you have the algorithms that are like, we want your clicks, and so you're really mostly clicking this stuff. We'll give you more of this stuff and less of everything else. So you're really going to start mostly seeing that same kind of thing. So I don't know, there is some of it where you kind of have to search it out. It's like, all right, this is my view. I want to see what other people have to say on this. Like, not just, okay, well, this person is just saying the things that I already think, and that makes me feel good inside because someone else says it, and it's not just me. But, like, really trying to understand, okay, where are they coming from with this? Like, I feel like there's so many people today that have very good intentions and really good hearts that just haven't taken the time to sit and talk to each other about where they're trying to go as an end with this. Like, okay, well, I think this would be great for people, and so that's why I see this path and I see how this has helped people, and let's go with this. And someone may oppose them, and it's like, yeah, but I don't really think that's the way. Like, this is how I've seen it help people, and trying to find, okay, is there a synergy between these? Like, can we work together like people have done forever? Or do we just block each other and never talk again?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'd like to see more people who can get past the disagreement and still be friends even after some of this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, is the goal to agree to disagree or to actually understand each other? And, you know, like there's the parable, I don't know if it's a parable, but like the blind people and the elephant, you know, like different blind people are touching different parts of the elephant. They have different experiences. Like, oh, I think an elephant is hard because they're touching the tusk, that whole thing. And so for me, the ultimate goal is to not only get to a place where I can agree to disagree with people, but kind of piece together our experiences of reality such that, like, even though we have different experiences, we're actually agreeing and figuring out what the whole elephant looks like.
Yeah.
You know, for me, that's the ultimate goal. Agreeing to disagree is like cool, and like you should be able to do that and still eat dinner with each other. And, you know,
and I think agree to disagree may be like a step along the road towards finding the whole elephant.
Right.
Like, how
else are you going to get there, right? If you can't just sit comfortably next to people you vehemently dislike.
And yeah, so like as far as the elephant analogy, I think there's kind of a distinction between, okay, this is like the objective truth of the thing. It's all an elephant. Speaking of,
we do have an elephant.
There's a little elephant right here. So, I mean, objectively, there is an elephant. Like, but your experience with the elephant and your knowledge of the elephant is unique to you. Like, you understand what you've experienced of the elephant, but most of us have an incomplete picture. And that's where you have to talk to people to try and get the rest of that and try and put it all together. Like, that's where it's like, I wish more people would talk and try and find, okay, I see what you're saying. And that kind of connects with some of what I've found. And then try and find that piece where someone's got the tusk, someone's got the tail. Let's find the legs in the middle and the rest of the body and realize that it is one elephant. Yeah. And you're just seeing different aspects of it.
We're all right. Yeah. Yeah, and it goes so far deep, like to the point where, you know, people's brains are made differently and your personalities are different, and that alters your perception of reality such that you have to reconcile that too. Like, there's that. You're made differently, you perceive reality differently, and then you live different lives. You have different relationships. Yeah. You have different like ideologies in your brain, you know, trying to help you understand the world. So there's a lot. You have to go really deep to get to the point where you're actually piecing together a meaningful picture of the elephant.
I think some of that comes to being able to admit, I don't have the whole picture. Like,
oh yeah,
and not being like, no, an elephant is pretty much basically just a tree,
just
warm
a tree.
That is all there is to an elephant. There's no flexible bit. That's not an elephant. You're wrong.
Right.
I'm gonna just kind of wall you off and stay in my own. This is my elephant.
That's a good point. That's the fundamental starting place, is humility of your knowledge, and even a humility that like your personality type is not all there is.
Yeah, it's not the only way to go about exploring this world.
Yeah. It was really weird to take the Myers-Briggs test and like hear my like personal values listed. Like it was something like you know, trying to see the world through other people's shoes or whatever, you know, like that's important to you. And I'm like, that is important to me. And so when I see other people, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not looking at the world through other people's shoes. They should do that more often. When really that's a good thing, but it's also programmed in my personality, clearly.
And there's other people that are not going to be wired that way.
Right.
And that, I think that's perfect. Like,
yes.
Kind of go back to a biblical analogy. Like, the body is made up of many different parts. Some people, they're the eyes. They can see the picture of what's going on. But they may not be the ones that are equipped to carry that forward. You need the feet, the legs, the hands, to do everything else. Like,
Right.
not saying you can't do anything if that's your style, but like people are going to be more inclined one direction or the other. And it's like, I don't know, if you're more of a, all right, let's take charge, let's organize something, let's get people on board and let's go do this. Like, they may not necessarily be the, all right, let's try and understand all facets of things, but they have their own strength and their own skill that they bring to the table that, again, it doesn't work so well separately, but you have to try and find a way to bring that all together to function as a unified group.
Yes. A super organism.
Yeah.
The full body.
And if you just have a group that's all hands.
All hands.
All hands. Just a mass of fingers.
Gross. Yeah, we don't want that.
I mean, wash your hands, you'll be fine.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an extremely practical analogy, right? You need to be able to respect each other enough to act as part of a bigger organism, right? You know, but I like the biblical analogy. It's good because it's true, right? You know, I like it. So, okay, that takes me back to where I started a little bit.
All right.
Why is this important? Why am I trying to poke people into saying things they don't want to talk about necessarily, and saying things that might be offensive and draw negative press? Because I don't know how else we're going to get to any meaningful conversation if we don't just blow past the people who just respond emotionally to a topic and then mouth off about it. Like, there needs to be, and especially like with racism, I'm not actually going there, don't worry, but I'm just saying, like, that's a deeply psychological phenomenon that has a lot of different facets in the human mind, you know. Treating, I mean, you could analyze it 10 different ways. And so you kind of need to be free to honestly report what is happening in your brain. Like, growing up, you know, I saw like these 20 black people act a certain way that had an impact on my psychology in X, Y, and Z way. And I need to be free to get through that whole exposition, that report of my mind, just to get it on the table without being interrupted with like, oh my gosh, you're a bad person. Oh my gosh, that's racist. Oh my gosh, like, you shouldn't say things like that. Because then it's like, you can't even dissect yourself. You can't get it onto the table to have a conversation about it. You can't work towards getting a picture of the elephant that we're trying to get towards, you know. We can't get to solutions to society level problems. Like, I just want to blow past that first step, that little gate, you know. It's like, I feel like we're elephants with this, what's the analogy exactly? Like, they like tie a rope to an elephant, but it's not actually attached to anything. Or like, we're elephants with a little fence around us that's 2 inches high, and we think we can't go past it because something terrible happened. But I'm just like, I want to, like, there's so much interesting material there, you know, that I want to dive into. Yeah,
and I think going about it in a personal fashion, like more one-on-one style conversations, removes a good chunk of that barrier. So I think there's a lot of people, when they go to argue something on Facebook and they want to post it, they want other people to see it. And it's like, they may not consciously think it, but I want to increase my standing in a group. And so if I say this and I get a bunch of affirmation for it, then that's good. I get a dopamine hit and everything feels nice. Like, okay, this feels right. But when it's just you and me and we're talking, like, who am I putting on a show for? You? And if you disagree with me, like, I mean, I'm not really gaining anything by doing that. So I think it's easier when you're able to talk without thinking like, oh, people are watching me. Like, I should be careful so that like I don't lose their support, because especially with how media is connected with people these days, and how especially now more people are communicating through the internet than ever, and it's like, okay, well, what I put out there is very visible, and I want people on my side with it. And I mean, I don't know,
is that right though? Is that good? Like, I just feel like so many people would benefit. Like, let's say someone doesn't have the courage. The whole trying to score points with your side, you know.
I mean, it depends on kind of where you're putting your value with things, where it's like, if you're living your life online and you're kind of focused on getting those likes, getting those positive comments, it's like, especially if you're not interacting with people daily and that's your interaction, it's like, I would like more positive interaction in this sucky period of 2020. Like, I mean, for a lot of people, it's like, okay, this keeps me going. Like, this is my positive human interaction for the day, because I'm not gonna go say hi to Wendy at work and get a wave from Bill and everything that goes along with just actually being around people.
That's fair. Yeah, if you just want a space that's like pleasant. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. It's like I think we should be free to not have to care about every bad thing in the world, because it's too much for one person to handle.
Yeah. There's so much. You can't legitimately care about everything.
You literally can't. Yeah. You know, you can care about one thing at a time. Is that noise? I don't know. Yeah, like you can care maybe about whatever is on the news. Maybe, you know, like if even just like having looking at the news and processing that much of all of the bad things that are happening in the world is enough to make you miserable.
Well, like, I mean, even just in the last day or two, like seeing the explosion that happened over in Beirut.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, that's awful. And then, I mean, just a little bit later, it's like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about that at all for like the last 12 hours. And I mean, there's some of it where it's like, you're just kind of bombarded by it with the media these days of like, all right, here's this terrible thing, and this terrible thing, and this terrible thing. And we'll review the first two again tomorrow when we add another terrible thing. And
yeah,
it's like,
you can't
there's
do
just
anything
so
to
much.
fix it.
Yeah. It's like, what do you want me to do? Like, I mean, there's only so much money that I could donate. There's only so many hours that I could invest my own labor into of trying to help people. And
yeah,
there's only so much that I can like just compute in my head of like, all right, I actually care about these things and want to find a solution to help improve this.
Yeah.
And there's a point where it's like, that really sucks, and I'll acknowledge that, and I wish things were better, but I've got to take care of my own sphere of influence right here. Like,
yeah.
I can't care about everything else that's going on in the world that I can't affect, that I can't really change or do anything about if my plate's already full.
Yeah.
Like, so there's a lot of it where you just got to rely on the other people that are there to be able to do the same and take care of what they can where they can.
Yeah. Yeah. In one of my Facebook posts, I like proposed the metaphor of, you know, kids on a soccer field where it's tempting to just everyone run towards the ball and cluster instead of just like staying on your part of the field and taking care of like your role, what you're supposed to be doing, so that you can actually have an organized soccer game and accomplish something. You take care of your sphere of influence, and a good like red flag that you're caring too much about something that's outside of your sphere of influence is if you've been caring about it for a long time, you've been trying to change it, and it has not changed. That's maybe a good indicator that you cannot change it.
Yeah. Well, and there's some of it where like activism these days is often considered, hey, I'm going to create a post, and if everybody likes this post, then, you're good people making a difference. Share this, comment, like with your friends, and it's like, I don't know, there's a lot of it where the activism bar has kind of really dropped as far as a standard of what counts for people saying, like, oh yeah, that was helpful.
Yeah. And
like,
it does something. Like,
it does.
Social pressure prompts people to do things, right? You know, and there's, you know, I don't know all of the specific reforms. Like, there's some good police reforms, right, that had come just from basically social pressure protests. But if you were to dissect the individual contribution of each Facebook post, people probably feel like it was more important than it really was. It was really like
it had
a drop in an ocean, which is like not a bad thing.
I mean,
you know, technically,
a drop does add water.
It does add water,
but
yes,
it's going to evaporate at a greater rate than you're able to change.
Yeah, and I think I think that's part of why we pay attention to national elections, but not local elections, where we would have a lot more influence voting locally. You know, but just
the national seems like it's such a big deal. It affects everyone. How are we not focused on this thing that could affect the entire country and the entire world?
Right.
Can't bother to look at what's happening in our own county? Like, that's small scale stuff, man. We should focus on this.
Yes.
And
ironically, you would have a bigger impact if you focused on the smaller scale stuff.
Yeah, because that is going to change what's directly around you.
Yes.
And I mean, that's the actual implementation level of that national scale thing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they may make, okay, this is federal law. And then it comes down to, okay, how is each state going to enforce that? How is each county in that state going to go about it? How is each city in that county going to go about it? And that's up to those officials that you elect at that level.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little bit like the, you know, the guy who wanted to change the world, and he kept like getting rejected by the world, and then he tried to change his city and rejected by his city. Have you heard that?
No.
So yeah, I mean, it's a little cliche little thing of the guy who wanted to change the world, tried to change the world, didn't work. You know, the world was like, screw you, you're just a guy. Then he tried to change like city or neighborhood or whatever, no impact, just kept hitting, you know, closed doors. Tried to change his family. His family was like, whatever, man. But then he tried to change himself, and then he changed the world.
I feel like there's a lot more story to expand on than that, but
yeah, I don't remember how it was told to me, but the point is, changing yourself is the thing that actually accomplishes something.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of...
Counterintuitively. Perhaps.
I mean, depending on how you think about it.
Depending on how you think about it, but yes, we don't tend to think that way.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, there was always a lot of call for personal responsibility in my family. So, like, you are in charge of your responses, your actions, and what you are doing. Like, so there was a lot less impact if I would yell at my brother to do something and scream at him to do something than if I would go do something instead. And I mean, I don't know, as you were talking, it reminded me of, I think it was one of his 12 rules for life from Jordan Peterson.
Did you read the book? I listened to the
haven't read the
book. It's good.
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of books that I should pick up and read just to get an idea of what people are talking about with it. But I've listened to several podcasts that he's done.
You get the gist.
A lot of his like personal vlogs kind of stuff. But just take what you have control over and organize that to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
And see how that spreads from there. But if all you have is your room and that's all that you have control over, like you don't own the house because you're living with your parents or you're still in school or something like that, you have control over your room. Make that the best you can.
Yeah.
And just kind of that, this is your level of responsibility. Do the best that you can with it. Going back to kind of another Bible analogy, I think of the guy who was like, all right, I'm going to give you, what was it, like 10 talents of gold? And
I think it just says talents. I think that's the unit of money.
It was a unit. I just didn't remember exactly what it was based in. But yeah, so he's like,
Based.
all right, I'm going to give you this amount of money. I'm going to give you this amount of money, and I'm going to give you this amount of money. And it's like, all right, I went out, I invested it, and I doubled your return. It's like, well done, fantastic. You took what was given to you, and you made the best of it. Mm-hmm. Second guy, same thing. Cool, I went out, took your money, and got a good return. And it's like, sweet, well done. And then the last guy was like, didn't really do anything with it. I just made sure it wasn't going to change, so I hid it away and did nothing with it. Didn't lose any money.
Didn't lose it.
Why?
Yeah, you're
why
scared.
would I? Yeah, why did I entrust you with this if you weren't going to do your best with it?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, no, it's a powerful concept, you know. And it's funny, like, even I remember him telling a story about, like, when someone actually does clean their room. Let's say they're in a household that's kind of in disarray, in an unstable family situation. I can't remember exactly the story, but like there's a kid who did organize his room, and the pushback you get from the people that are close to you is weird. Like, it's weird how when you try to organize yourself, everyone around you is like, what, do you think you're better than us? Like,
and trying to,
what do you think you're doing? You know,
like, they see you elevating yourself. It's like, all right, I want to do better. And then it's like, I don't know, come back. We don't want to try to match you. You're making us look bad.
Yeah, there's massive backlash in a weird way. But it's a really powerful concept. But it's tough. Like, for me, I don't care about my local elections. I should, but I don't. Mm-hmm. It's like there's just a gravity towards like the larger things that you have a smaller part in, because your brain tricks you into thinking you actually have a bigger part in them than you do. But in reality, you're like, you know, and you'd be much better focusing on yourself, and you'd accomplish so much more. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I keep jumping back to Bible stuff, but like the phrase "love your neighbor" comes to mind, and it's not, all right, I want you to love everyone across the world, like, and that's who you should focus on, is everybody, but love your neighbor, the person who is right next door to you, who is around you in where you live, and who you actually have some level of influence with. Because if I decide to go call up some guy living, let's say, middle of Kansas, all right, and it's like, hey, my name's Thane, and this is what I think you should do, and that's not going to go over very well. Most likely it's going to be like, nah, some kid's crank calling me, and they hang up, and it has no impact other than a slight annoyance for their day. Whereas if I go talk to the guy who lives next door, who I have some level of relationship with, we've built some level of respect with one another, it may actually have an impact that could help him, could help me, just through that dialogue that we have together. Yeah.
You're right. And I think we need to be comfortable with living a smaller life, almost. Like, I mean, at least for me, you grow up in the church and you learn about, I don't know, you want to have like this really great, awesome impact, you know? And I think probably everyone has that urge, whether you're religious or not. You know, for religious people, it's like, you know, I want to, you know, save a bunch of people or do some awesome thing, or have some amazing calling and lead worship for 1 billion people. And for other people, it's, you know, they just want to feel greatness. They want to live a meaningful life. And so you naturally just like try to ratchet up the scale of like, man, I've got this vision for being really famous or having this huge impact, when meaning, I think, is probably hidden in like starting a family. And like that's it. And being kind to your neighbors. Like that's where like the profound, rich meaning of life is. And it's not in the large delusions of grandeur that we have for what a meaningful life might be.
Yeah,
that's something I'm coming to terms with, over the past little while.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of it where if you take the scale way down, like, all right, I'm not going to try and help and impress everybody on Facebook. Let's focus that down to the community that I actually see every day. And I've noticed a little bit of this, like working at North Bay, where I see a lot of students. I have like usually between 8 and 12 students every week during the school year. And I only get them for a week. So I think the amount of impact I'm able to have during that week isn't as much as, say, if I were helping out with a youth group where I see the same roughly group of kids for 5 or 6 years, and you build that relationship, you build that influence with one another, and what you can do with that has a lot more impact, I think, just because you're not focusing on, all right, how do I help hundreds of kids? Like, I'm going to focus on like these 15 and let's do the best that I can as far as teaching them and discipling them, basically. Like, so like thinking back to experiences you may have had growing up, like who do you remember more? Those people that, I mean, they met with you once a week for several years compared to that one time you went to a retreat or a camp, or like those experiences that in the moment, great, they may have a very powerful impact, but as far as a lasting impact, it's something that I would find more meaningful and more helpful. Compare that to someone who's consistently there for years. Like, I found that a lot with teachers and coaches, and like those were the people that were able to help me change my life for the better when I was struggling. And like, you'd go to a conference and it's like, it's very emotional, and I'm like feeling the rush and getting caught up with the crowd and everything, but it doesn't have the same effect as those people that are there consistently. And it's like, that is the demonstration of love, where they are there for you. It's not, hey, I'm here and I'm touring and I'll talk to you this week, and then we're going to talk to 1,000 other kids next week, and I'm like going across the country. And it's like, that's not bad. That does have some level of impact, but you got to bring it down to that more meaningful, smaller scale, where it's like, these are the guys that show up every week because they care. And it's not, I'm on a tour, this is a job for me, but they're there for the people that are around them. So same with neighbors. Like, you're not getting paid to be neighbors, but you're neighbors and neighborly because that's a choice that you choose to make. And it's like, I care enough to focus on trying to improve our relationship. So I think that level of care and knowing, hey, they want good for me, like they're on my side, to kind of bring it back to a lot of how I think people tend to perceive the world through the internet, of like, all right, are you on my side? Are you with me? Are you against me? And there's no better demonstration of you are on my side than someone who consistently shows up and wants good for you and chooses that consistently.
It seems like you probably care about loyalty a lot. Sharon's the same way, I think. I don't know if I'm just like broken or something, but I can tell that my brain doesn't care about loyalty in the same way that other people's do. Like you. It's interesting. I don't know why, but
I mean, I can see where that would be helpful, though, as far as being less concerned about, all right, are you on my side? Are you not? When it comes to trying to have these conversations, though. It's like, you're less worried about
all things, all people equal kind of deal.
Just more open to being able to listen to what people have to say and not adding that additional, okay, here's where my line is. Are you on this side of it or this side of it? As you're talking subconsciously, like. No, I can totally, and I can see the pros and cons, right?
It's good in terms of like maybe openness of discussion and stuff like that, but it's bad in terms of maybe like I don't know, people oriented towards loyalty, maybe they can form like stronger emotional bonds or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
something like that.
Do you feel like you're lacking in emotional bonds?
I've got so many emotional bonds. Terrible joke. I don't know. Probably not any more than the normal guy.
Okay.
I think guys are pretty bad at that.
Yeah. I mean, again, kind of varies person to person, but
yeah. I'm decent at this point, I think. I'm trying to get better at like being good friends with people, you know, and not just like sitting at home and working and that's it.
Which I appreciate.
What, sitting at home and working?
No, when you come over and you're a friend.
Yeah. And we actually do something.
Yeah. Especially since we don't see each other at church anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
So I may catch you singing, and that's as close as it gets.
You're welcome.
I do appreciate it.
Grace you with my voice.
I do still go back to the first album sometimes when it's like, I just need something soothing to sleep to.
Yeah.
And
number 5.
It's Serenity of a Dark Winding Road.
Oh, yeah.
Easily my favorite.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's a long one.
Yes, it's perfect. Like, that's the kind of song that I'll find a road. Like, whenever I'm taking walks in the evening or I'm driving home from work or something, it's like, all right, this is going to round out this trip.
Thanks. That's so nice of you. Appreciate that. What were we talking about?
We're talking about your lack of loyalty in committing to friendships.
Let's not go there. Okay. No, just kidding. No, before that. Yeah, I don't know. This was good though. Covered some good ground. So like, is there something that you are doing practically to kind of apply this to your life at all?
So it kind of started a few weeks before the 4th of July as far as my most recent thought on this kind of thing. But so I've kind of known my neighbor right next to me since he moved in, and like, I mean, very cordial, very friendly, like, but I tend to do I'm going to sit here and be inside and not interact with you for the majority of the time that I've known him.
It's way easier.
Like, we're buddies in the sense of if he needs to borrow something, if I need to borrow something, and we have it available, like, we're happy to lend it to each other. And I mean, I think that's a decent mark of neighborhood. But
yeah. So already like pretty nice.
Yeah. And there was just one night when, like, I just wanted to go sit on the porch and watch the sunset. And so I did. And he was out there. A couple other neighbors were out there. And, like, I'd known a couple of them just because I'd run into them, go into the car and stuff and say hi. And, but that was, like, the first time I had a conversation with all of them together. And it's like, why haven't I done this more? Like, I've been missing out on the company of just being around people, even from our front porches. And so we were in there, had a good talk. We talked for like 3 hours with him, one of the guys down the street, and an older lady who lives like 2 houses down. And because at the time the one next to us was just being renovated, so there was no one there. But so we got to sit, got to talk, and I mean, I was out there for like 2-3 hours. And a little ways after that, it was like the next night, Ryan was like, hey, you're strong, you want to come help us with something? And so he took me across the street and we helped our other neighbor, who's also Ryan. And so we helped him carry this thing that the neighbor next to him had built, where he'd noticed second Ryan out there like smoking behind his house in the rain. I was like, oh man, like, I want to build him a place. And so he made like this little gazebo kind of thing, not much bigger than like the area of the carpet here, and like, but big enough to fit around like a picnic bench, because they had a picnic bench out front. And so he just built it and set it out back, and like didn't really say anything to him. It was just like, this is yours now, And
that's so nice.
yeah, and I mean, it was again one of those things that was like, man, I wish I had more of that, like that community with my community.
Yeah.
And so he helped me lift that over into second Ryan's yard, and I was like, oh man, thanks so much. Like, what's your name? And I'm like, oh, I'm Thane. And he's like, Ryan, nice to meet you. Not that Ryan, this Ryan. It's like, all right. And so after that, he was like, hey man, you like barbecue? Like, next time we're out here cooking, just come on by. We have a plate for you. Like,
yeah,
just swing by. We'd love to have you. And
it's awesome.
It's like, that's awesome. I just got like a free meal and a new friend out of going out to help him.
And also a free meal.
Yes, and also a free meal. So, and then like over the next couple of weeks, like we started getting together, and first Ryan was like, hey man, they canceled fireworks over at UD this year, so do you want to have our own?
And I was like, some stuff up.
Pretty much. So he's like, I need someone to think this through for me, because like I've never done this before and you seem like a rational guy, so I just want you to like double check everything, and like if I missed any things, I need you to be the voice of reason behind this, because
it's good.
I'm gonna try not to get drunk, but I may be a little buzzed on the 4th, so like help.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, sure, because he'd gone and like a bunch of people in the neighborhood had chipped in money to buy fireworks.
Wow.
And so like we did our own little fireworks display, allegedly, if there's anyone who may or may not be watching.
It's legal in Delaware now.
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll assume that. Allegedly, we may or may not have done a fireworks display. And
nice.
It was great. Like, tons of people just came out. They walked over to that little park, kind of in the middle there, allegedly.
Yeah.
And it was just a good bonding moment. So went back. Ryan, of course, had cooked food. I was like, he had skewers for everything. I was like, here's chicken, here's beef, here's veggies. I was like, take a skewer. I'm like, dude, I just crushed a pizza before this whole thing. Like, I could probably only handle a couple of these. It's like, oh man, come on. Like, I made all of this. Eat. And I was like, the generosity was super nice.
Yeah.
And then afterward, like, we had a whole spare pizza, and it was like, I can't eat this. And so I was walking back and said hi to one of the guys a few houses down, and he's like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, I didn't expect this to become a conversation. Usually when I say, hey, how's it going to people, they say, not much, and keep going.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, sweet, I get to talk to someone. And it's like we talked for about an hour, and he was talking about like a lot of the struggles he's been going through in life, and it's like, hey man, you should start working out. Like, you got a good frame, you should bulk up. It's like, okay, well,
he told you that.
Yeah. And it was like, I mean, I'll take it. But he was like, oh man, like, do you have any food? I'm real hungry. It's like, I've got a whole pizza. Do you like pepperoni? And so, I mean, we brought that over, and like his housemate came out, and like we kept talking for like an hour after Dave had already gone back. And I don't know, it was just a
wholesome, beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I mean, there was one thought that really stuck with me that whole night, and it's, how have I not talked to half of these people before? Like, why did it take quarantine fireworks for us to get to know each other? I'm glad that it happened. I'm glad that it did open that door for us, but I don't know, there's kind of that self-critical bit of, man, why didn't I try and meet people before? And yeah, so
yeah,
it's definitely a work in progress. Like, we are not all best friends by any means, but I mean, I'm getting to know them at least.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I tend to think about, it's almost like there's two different axes of things you could do in life, and I always think about just planning for the future practically. Like, man, how could I do some good stuff in the future?
Did you just say seduce good stuff?
No, do some good stuff.
Do some good stuff.
You know, maybe I could donate to charity. You know, like that's something you can.
How are you
plan.
Arranging your investments for everything? Whether it's, this is how I'm gonna spend my time, this is where I'm gonna.
Yeah, you know, it's like the things that you can plan out for the future. Like that's all great stuff. But then there's like just the personal relationships, like you in that very small community making each other's lives better by talking to each other and being kind. Like it's just a totally different thing, but in a sense that's like what it's all about, you know, not in a cheesy way, you know.
And I would think so. There's a lot of value to that planning and investment stage of things, but I think again it's kind of like you've got the tusk of the elephant and you need the rest of the elephant to make that fully worthwhile. So like you can plan for a lot of stuff, but to me, like the planning is to enable you to do everything else. Yeah. Like it doesn't do you good just to keep planning and planning and planning and miss out on what that planning is letting you do in those moments.
Well, it started out by you just sitting on the porch, right? And like if I was in that situation, I don't know, I probably wouldn't be quite as open, but I also like, you know, I'm curious, and so one thing could have led to another. But at the same time, I would not have sat on the porch in the first place. And so I would have never had that experience. I didn't have that experience. Sounds like the neighborhood is a little different now than it was. Is that right?
In some ways, yeah. Like, there's some of it where it's like, I haven't known the neighbors to know who's moved out. Like, only the ones, like, immediately next to us. But, shoot, I lost my train of thought on that.
Well, I was saying, like it's not like the planning is a bad thing. It's just there's that little part of I'm gonna go sit out on the porch today and be open to whatever.
Yeah, well,
that's to be built into your life somehow.
So I think kind of in that experiencing the present sort of thing, like I just wanted to go out and watch the sunset before it faded. I was like, it's a great sunset, I don't want to miss it. And like, I don't know, it makes me think of like comets, and it's like, all right, I know this comet is going to be swinging by at this point, and like let's get stuff ready so that I can go watch the comet. It's like the comet may be beautiful as it goes across. For me, I'm a sunset guy, so like I'd be thinking of, man, you're missing all these sunsets, like planning out this comet visit and not just going outside and enjoying the beauty that is there. So I mean, great, you get to see a comet, it's fantastic. But sunsets are also important.
They're also important, yeah. But I don't know, I'm trying to like categorize whatever that spontaneity is that got you into that pleasant like relationship with the other person, you know,
just running into each other and being nice. Like, yeah, it's like, oh, hey, you're new, my name's Thane, nice to meet you. Ryan, nice to meet you. And that was pretty much how it went. And it just, I mean, you have more interactions, you go a little bit further with each one. Like, it's like, hey man, how's it going? As you pass the cars in the morning, it's like going out to the car, he's going to work, and I mean, you see each other, you say hi, and sometimes just say something like, man, it can be about the weather. Like, I know it's cliche and it's like the, oh no, we've run out of things to talk about, but sometimes you just need anything to talk about to start something.
Yeah, there's a nice guy like next door in the mobile home park we just moved out from that I always like waved and said hi to, but I never decided to just have a little bit longer conversation and a little bit longer conversation. I just had a cap. Like, hey man, what's up? Yeah. And there's an opportunity there that was wasted, I think, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, some of it, like, life is busy, people are trying to do their own thing, and sometimes you just don't have the time to sit and jump into a half-hour conversation.
Hmm.
But when you can find those times, or especially make those times and be intentional about it, where it's like, all right, the next time I see Ryan, I'm going to try and talk to him for at least 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it can be about anything, but just to have that conversation and try and get to know a little bit more about him and maybe share a little bit more about myself. And just being intentional about starting to build those connections. Because it doesn't always happen by accident and happenstance. Like,
right, especially as you get busy, it's like definitely it's not going to happen easily.
And I don't know, there's so much of it that you can focus on everything else that's going on. Like, all right, going to work, going home, got my family, and sometimes, like, all right, that is your sphere of influence.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's that little expansion that kind of pops out, it's like you have a chance to relate to your neighbors. And
side quest.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got the time, if you've got the energy, if it's not like, okay, I'm physically just being drained at work and then I've got to go home and help my family, and like that's all that I can handle that. You don't have to try and reach out more than what you're capable of in that. But I mean, if you have that capability and the opportunity presents itself, why not?
Yeah.
Take hold of it, because you may not get that opportunity again, and you miss out on so much good that could come out of it. And sometimes you find out your neighbor's a jerk and you really don't want to talk to him. But
yeah, like our last neighbor, I don't know if I would want to enter his home. Just because I saw the trash can being thrown at the car as it was leaving, and all the yelling. But yeah, sometimes it's nice to take that further. I mean, I think that's a wonderful place to end. And that's such an awesome story. I'm glad you shared it. I'm glad we found ourselves in that territory that you could share it. And I think that would just make all of our lives so much richer if we could live a little bit more like that, and just being friendlier and willing to make new connections, new relationships.
And, I mean, just be willing to love the people that you encounter.
There you go.
I mean, even if it's just a little bit, it could be a high. But
little finger gun. Well, thanks, Thane. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I feel like that's a good place to end.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
I mean, good for the moment. You have to have me on other times.
No.
Explore. Oh, all right. Well, in that case, I gotta get this out. There's no chance.
You have a thesis you need to present. I'm really glad that the dog stopped barking. That was good.
Yes.
Yeah, you made it out.
I don't know if he just kind of forgot that I'm here. Like if there was an object of permanence that just faded.
He's not very smart. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
I'll have you back soon.
Alrighty.
Bye, everyone.
Later.